What up, everyone? Maui BJJ Retreat is back. Let's go. Go to elliottmarshall.com, click on Be a Badass, and then under there you will see retreats, and you will get the Maui BJJ Retreat. Let's do it. Aloha culture, amazing jiu-jitsu, some great Hawaiian food, a bunch of dudes hanging out together on a really epic trip that will, I really hope, change your life. I know will change your life. So, elliottmarshall.com, Be a Badass, click on retreats. Let's go. What's up, guys? This is former UFC fighter Elliott Marshall, and you are listening to The Blueprint. I believe that there's a blueprint of how the most successful people structure their lives. They don't all do it the same. They don't all do the same things. And on this podcast, you're going to hear inspirations, motivations, and stories about how they go through their life. These stories will give you clues and tricks of exactly how you can discover your passion, find your power, and then go give your purpose to the world. Thank you so much for listening. Let's jump into this week's episode. This episode of the podcast is with Jenn Lim. Jenn is an author and CEO of CEO of the company Delivering Happiness, and that is what we talked about. We talked about happiness, but that turned into so much more. How to be happy, what happy even looks like, how do you deal with differences and difficulties through real authenticity and great communication. So get ready for a great podcast, a great time. I had a great time. I really had a great time talking to Jenn. So without further ado, here we go. Jenn Lim. I'm looking at this book behind you, Beyond Happiness. And I obviously I don't do too much research on my guests because I like to go on the journey with the person.
Cool.
And, delivering happiness. So you are about this happiness topic. Mm-hmm. What is happy? What even is it, Jenn?
Well, just to preface it all, I'm on this happiness journey, but the irony is that I was not that happy-go-lucky kid growing up in school. I was reading existential books like The Stranger, just really questioning life and why we're here. But fast forward.
Stop. Nope, we're not fast forwarding. Stop. You got me right. Okay, so you're saying you're not that happy as a kid. Like, how unhappy and how young, and when did this start?
I'm not saying I'm not harping on my childhood or my parents, but I just remember being very cynical. I was happy as a kid, but I just had a lot of questions. I just felt like I wasn't quite feeling like I fit. The word now is belong, but back then it's just I'm uncomfortable. Is it me? Is it them? What's going on in this place? So I kind of carried that throughout my years up and through college. I felt I was opening up a little bit. I think Berkeley and maybe in Colorado where you live, it's a little bit more open to different ideas and personalities and what does it mean to be truly yourself and authentically so. So I think that's why I was curious about not happiness, but those existential questions, why are we here? And it wasn't until I majored in Asian American studies. So I freaked out my parents and I said, what the hell are you going to do with that? But I got lucky and got swept up in the first .com back in the day. And so money, title, status was super easy. And the end of that story, .com busted. I lost it all. And then within the same year, 9/11, and then I found out my dad got diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. So those 3 events were pretty low. And I realized chasing that money, title, status didn't mean that much at all. So that's...
Jen, how old are you?
When you ask that question, I have to ask, how old do you think I am?
Yeah, I was gonna say younger than me. You look younger than me, and I'm about to be 43.
43, nice. Yeah. I'm 49.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm the 49er.
Yeah, you're a 49er. Yeah. What do they say? 40 is old for being young, and 50 is young for being old. I just heard this the other day.
I like that. That works.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right. So you're a little older than me.
a little bit.
That's where the .com thing comes in, right? Because I was in college for the .com thing. So,
Yeah,
or just getting out. I wasn't really there. So, okay. So go ahead. Your dad. So 3 events,
yeah,
9/11,
trifecta.
.com and your dad.
Yeah, and for that time, it was those things that hit me like a 1, 2, 3 punch, and then I decided I'm going to live my life differently and prioritize. I didn't call it values back then, but I said prioritize my life by things that I would never decide and regret on. So I prioritized people in my life, like, shortly lost my dad after. I prioritized my freedom to be, just to feel like I have the choice to do what I would like to do. After getting laid off by someone that didn't really care, that really, kind of honed it in on me, on that one for me. And then the third one is authenticity. Like I really wanted to feel like I can be myself. So by leading with those values, then fast forward, and sorry, a long answer to your happiness question, but stumbled on, along with my co-founder, a thing called positive psychology and happiness of science, like scientific happiness. And it was like, kind of like, whoa, this stuff actually exists. Like there's been data and academic science, researching what it is to make sure you're fundamentally sustainably happy, not like the pleasures of life or rainbows and unicorns happiness, which is, part of it, but those are just pleasures. Those are fleeting. But what are the most sustainable forms of happiness was really like, an aha moment. It's having a sense of progress. It's having a sense of control or autonomy. It's having a connectedness, meaningful connections, and ultimately it's having a higher purpose. And we hear this a lot, right? Like, what are you doing? What are you a part of that's bigger than yourself? Mm-hmm. So that was like that aha moment of like, oh, this exists. So how do we apply it? Not the academic side of things, but to our everyday lives. Specifically started doing that at Zappos, using that as a petri dish to say, how can we make workplaces more happy? People authentically more happy. So that's kind of how the journey began into happiness.
I would say with this happiness and workplace thing, what you just said there at the end, mm-hmm. I think it's very hard to live a happy life if you're not happy in your work, because you spend so much time at work, right? Like, yep. you let's just say a normal, quote unquote normal, right?
Yeah.
You wake up and you go to work, and then you work until about 5-ish, so you have like a couple hours before and a couple hours after. And if the majority of your day is spent doing something that sucks, whether or not you make a lot of money or not, does not matter. You're rather unhappy.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's like, in general, quote unquote norm is like 2/3 of your day when you're working full time. Right. And then through the course of your life, that's a big chunk of time. And I'm glad you see it that way, because sometimes people look at and think about work as like, that's not for happiness. It's just for the pay. It's for, those things that I need to do in life to get by, for those external things I want to get. But if you think about it in that, what you just framed, it's like, it's our time. It's our time in life. And if we are looking to seek a more fulfilling one, a meaningful one, and know that, like, it's not real to wake up in the morning and go to sleep and know that every moment of your day you're happy. That's just not it. Okay. Unless your name is Polly, last name Anna, right? But like, what can be real is that you wake up in the morning and you go to sleep knowing at least you lived according to what you believe in, how you want to live your life, your values, you can say, your purpose, but at least it's fulfilling in that way, according to what your authentic self wants to believe in. So I think that's the difference with where I am with happiness now versus then. And that's why my book is called Beyond Happiness, because it's a bit more than those highs in life. It's actually embracing our lows and knowing, in the last few years especially, the whole world has had a taste of what it means to be in a low.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, 2020. I really like this book called Tribal Leadership. I don't know if you read it. Have you read it?
Yeah.
Okay, like the 5 stages of a team, right? Like, life sucks. My life sucks. I'm great. You're not. We are great, and life is great. And I would say in 2020, for sure, no one had ever experienced it before. That pretty much no one that was alive. life sucked. Like, it didn't matter almost who you were. A lot of money, not a lot of money. We were all in this same boat for a while.
Totally.
And life sucked. And I think it did.
Uh-huh.
It did. There's nothing you can say about it. And I think part of really happiness, I can't say that I was that unhappy though. In 2020. Like, it sucked. It sucked. I was scared. But I mean, I was pretty happy still. So
that's good perspective.
I think they're able to be separated even when things aren't going well.
I totally agree with you. And that's the separation that's important to identify here and now, because a lot of people might not say the same thing you just said.
Of course.
And, but like, you know,
I'm very lucky in that sentence, right? Like, I got COVID, but I didn't get sick. Nobody in my family got very sick. My life actually got better. My wife quit her job. She was working in a hospital. And for the first couple months, she was like coming home, stripping naked in the garage, going and showering, right? Not coming near us because she's scared. And I own martial arts schools. So for us to stay alive, I had to actually go to work, you know, and be like, okay, we got to keep this thing going somehow. So we're doing like these opposite things.
Yeah.
And then she quit that job because she's like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah. Good for her.
Yeah. Good for her. So I was very lucky through COVID, you know, in that sense. And my whole life was at risk as well. Right. Like, we have $250,000 payroll every month. Yeah. And no money coming in maybe. So
that's scary. That's the scary bit.
Yeah. Well, I was still happy, still happy.
Well, you said you keep on saying the word lucky, and it makes me think of something my dad used to always say. It's like the harder you work, the luckier you get. Mm-hmm. But I also think now there's like that's old school thinking. Like, I think right now,
I don't believe that's luck, but go ahead.
Well,
it's a part of luck. It's a part of luck.
Yes. Yeah. I think it was a euphemism, but like, sure. I think what I think is an important add on to this current day is the more aware you are, the happier you might be. And I think what you're saying right now, what you've gone through with your wife and your family, is that you were aware of what a big thing towards happiness is: gratitude. And it sounds like you're grateful for the things that you were able to do, and you were rightfully scared of the things that, you know, freaked your freak. But with that sense of awareness, self-awareness, awareness of others, like, it does sound like you have compassion for those that did not have that, you know, a happy time.
Yeah. I'll define luck. Going back to the luck thing is, I think luck is that your hard work actually pays off. I'm lucky enough that when I work hard and harder, the more my life gets better. You know, where there's people in Africa, or even in this country even, who they work hard for like food on the table. Like just a meal. And they probably work harder than me, right? They probably, there's moms out there working 3 jobs and 2 jobs. And I mean, Jen, you and I are talking in the middle of the day on a podcast that really, who cares, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think what you're describing is along the lines of what my dad was meaning, but I think that, I'm glad you bring up Africa. Like, for an example, we're talking about happiness. When I visited there, this was like not too long after 9/11 too. So, the world was 180'd, and then we got 2020'd. And so then another time that we got the world at 180'd in terms of reality. But when I went there, and so basically, the trip was to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And that was like one of those things. It's like, how freaking lucky am I to be able to even try and do this? Mm-hmm. But walking around the villages, and there's just mud huts, right? And that's their house. And we go in, invite us in. They offer us tea. They offer us biscuits. They don't have anything, hardly. But they give us themselves, and they give us their genuine smiles and just love in their form. And after I saw that, it restored a lot of faith in, like, you could talk about all these things about what we might not have, and also think about what people don't have, but yet maintain a sense of, hey, look, I am here, I'm alive, and I'm going to make the best of it. And that memory is still within me, because no matter how hard we have it, and this is not to be Pollyanna, like we all have it hard, but to be aware of it and be able to identify it and name it, that's how we start growing past these things that really might have like debilitated us, our lows in our life.
I think sometimes we put our lows, what we would consider our, like we put our life on somebody else's life. Right?
Yeah.
Like my friend said it to me once because he grew up poor, and he was like, look, it wasn't that bad. I didn't know any different.
Right.
Like like whatever. Like if I don't know what going, what flying, what flying in a private jet is like, and not, I haven't flown in a private jet, but like, all these like, massively really like quote unquote cool experiences are like, and you just don't know any different. So it's not whatever. Worse is to know it and then lose it. And then, to like go from, Warren Buffett to where you were in Africa. Because now you're like, oh my God, how did this happen?
Yeah.
You have all this loss going on as well. And you've experienced something more. So I think sometimes those people who don't have are some of the happiest people because they're not even thinking about it.
Yeah. I'm sure your friend probably was happy in that environment until he saw maybe other things to compare to. And that's what kind of brings us to this point with this Buffett thing. The point, I mean, the reality is we're all going to lose something somehow, somewhere down the line. Whether it's me losing my dad, everyone's going to lose someone they love. They're going to lose a job. They're going to lose a relationship they thought they would always have. There's going to be some sort of loss. The biggest thing, if Buffett had to go to Africa, the biggest question then becomes in our lives, how do we react to it? How do we actually, we have uncontrollable things that come our way. What's within our control is what after we digest and perceive, what we do. And that's not easy, but that's basically the trajectory of our lives. We're going to be gaining things because we want to be productive human beings. We want to grow, and we're going to lose them. So how can we have better awareness and groundedness to be able to weather it? Resilience.
Grit, right? Grit,
yeah. Resilience and grit.
Yeah. How do we develop that? Because that's what I think truly makes you happy. Personally, right? Is that perspective of like, okay, 2020 happened.
Yeah.
How can I make this benefit me? How can I use this for myself?
Totally.
So how do we develop that?
So silver lining of this past few years, the whole world got 2020 at the same time. You kind of mentioned this earlier, everything, like wherever you are geographically, wherever you are socioeconomically, it all happened. Silver lining of that is that it kind of was a big reset on humanity and a reminder of who we are as human beings. And so because that happened around at the same time, I think this has been a huge kind of awakening. We heard about the Great Resignation, quiet quitting. It goes on and on and on, right? But like this great awakening or reawakening are those that actually got happier after this happened because they had the wherewithal to actually reflect, think, and integrate what they learned from that time. So I'll give you an example. As you asked for like, how do you go about it? We have an exercise we call happiness heartbeats, but basically the whole exercise is based on you being the star of your own show, practicing your own movie, and you just go reflect on your own life, your highs and lows, not just at work, but in general. And when you do that, you start seeing themes of what made those highs and what made those lows low, what people were there, what values were there or missing. Those kind of themes are kind of like an indicator to you as to what you really care about and who you are. What's really important about that exercise is that as you name those lows, you get to see the next high you hit. And, you can keep on reading every self-help book out there and read every inspirational quote, but it only goes so far because in the end, it's like, what does it actually mean to you? What does happiness actually mean to you? What does grit actually mean to you and what you've done? Because when you reflect on it, then personally, you've gone through it before and you've experienced that. And how did I get out of it? Oh, well, I did this, this, and this. And then next time you go through it, it becomes more like a growth period instead of a stress period. Like we could say trauma. I know that's a big word in terms of like could be a loaded word, but we've all had some sort of traumas in our life. But like being able to say, oh, I got out of that by doing this, this, and this. So therefore, I'm going to go through the next with more growth, post-traumatic growth versus post-traumatic stress. And that, as you probably know, as an athlete and everything you do, like that stuff gets absorbed in our bodies, absorbed in our minds. And if we're not aware of being able to differentiate, how, and reflect and be able to integrate, hey, that's been done before and I'll do something different next time. So then I can elevate. So not be in that low and dwell as long as I did before.
It's like, excuse me, it's like sports.
Mm-hmm.
The point of competition is to get better.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great. It's great to win. It's amazing to win. Let's be, I mean, I'm not going to say anything bad about winning.
Yeah.
But once you win, you still have the same job after you win. Because if you show up the same athlete, the same team, the same everything, it's not going to be enough next time.
Yeah.
Right? It's not, you have to grow. So you have to look at the skills that you gained during that time, the steps that you did, and then improve on them. And if you lose, it's the same thing. Like the next step, whether you're winning or losing, is still always the same, in my opinion. You have to be aware of what you did, and then you have to grow from it. And which is what you're kind of saying here about, happiness in general.
Totally. Did you see that interview with Giannis after they lost?
Oh my God.
That's so exactly bad. What you're saying right now. It's exactly what we're talking about. And I love how he did it.
Yeah. It was how he said, I'm not going to make it personal, because he was so mad at that guy. Right?
Exactly.
He was so mad at that guy. He wanted to tear that guy apart and scream and yell. I think Giannis became one of my I liked him already. But he became one of my favorite athletes just for, he's like, no, he stopped himself. It was like, I'm not going to make this personal.
Yes. And that's exactly, I love that you point that out, because that was, he said so many good things in that, but the fact that he did that in a highly emotional state, like they just freaking lost. And this guy asked the same question he did last year. And so you can imagine how we could be feeling at that moment. We're, working our butts off for our life for, but yet he had the wherewithal just to pause and be in that moment and not make it personal.
I don't think non-athletes can understand what it's like for millions of people to watch you fuck up, right? It's not like for most, like when you're not an athlete, you go, you have a bad day, it doesn't go well, you blow it. 10 people know about it, right? Like 10 people at max know about it. Right? When you're an athlete like this and it's on the stage, like, oh my God, millions and millions of people watch you mess up in your most vulnerable moments because you put everything into this. And then to have some jackass ask you and to keep your cool, that is so hard. That is so hard and so aware.
Totally. It's so crazy. I got to send you, I do this thing called What the What, which is like a short commentary. And I just did it on this. But basically that moment that we're talking about right now reminded me totally of Simone Biles. When she said, no, I'm not going to perform anymore. And that talk about, world stage of your workplace, everyone's eyes on you. And you say, no, I'm not going to do this. There were so many haters. But there are also so many, you freaking go, because you don't have to do what the world tells you to do. You do what is best for you. And I think that's another example and a reminder for us, even though we don't have millions of people looking at us working every day. Does it matter? Does it matter what we're working for? They worked all their lives for this moment. What are we working for in these moments?
The Simone Biles one was tricky for me. I'll be honest.
Yeah, tell me.
I'll be super honest. If she had the spins, right, where she was not right and not okay, like then by all means, please no, right, like because that I consider that like an injury, But for me as a fighter, for example, your job is to walk into the cage regardless of how you feel, because you're always scared. And you always don't really want to do it.
Sure.
So when we say I'm going to do something, I believe it's our job to do it. And even for me on my regular days, right? Like when I wake up and I'm like, oh man, I don't feel good.
Yeah.
I make a deal with myself. And my deal is, okay, today, unless I'm like really, really sick, right? Like if you're really sick, then out. Same
Yeah.
thing with the Simone Biles thing, right? But so it just depends for me a little bit. And I'm not in her head, so I can't really judge her.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't know if what it was. But and I'm a person who suffers who can experience really great anxiety, right? I have talked about it and I'm very open about this. But what got me out of that is just saying, no, Elliot, you're going to do this. You're going to do this because this is what you said you were going to do. Now, tomorrow, if I'm still like this, my plan tomorrow will be to rest.
Yeah.
But today we're going. And that's just for me a little bit because of how I got out. And I believe and my experience, and I understand this, a lot of it is my experience. I never wanted to actually walk to the cage. Like when they, when they said, let's go, I would have much rather the building collapsed, nobody die somehow, right? I don't want anybody to get injured, but the building collapsed and I don't have to go fight.
Yeah.
But I had to make myself do it.
I hear you. You know what's interesting? Yeah. I think I totally hear what you're saying. And one sentence you said was very important to highlight. And you said, I'm not going to judge. So the way you go through your mental and physical, like pre-game to game to post-game, everyone has their own, like we could talk about, is it Naomi Osaka, the tennis player?
The tennis player.
She did a very similar thing, right? Like outwardly, people were like, she could have played that, but so I think it just brings about this moment in time where people are making more of these choices more publicly, outwardly, and vocally. And so I love the fact that we can talk about it. And I love the fact that more people in everyday workplaces are talking about it, thinking about it, and doing something about it differently. Like before, I call it BC, before COVID, we could not talk about mental health, BC, right? We could not even bring that stuff up. But now the Surgeon General is saying, look, mental health, they're putting stickers on companies and saying this is hazardous to your health because of your mental health and anxiety and the stress levels are high, all these things. So I just like the fact that we can talk about it openly, more openly.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I'm a different, my whole entire, I know I say it on the podcast a lot, but my guests never know, so it fits the conversation. My dad's Black and my mom is Jewish, and her parents, my grandparents, survived the Holocaust. So I have this problem of not safe that I've experienced my entire life, which caused some massive mental health struggles for me and issues that I was forced at one point to take care of. Right, it was either crumble or get this together. And a lot of getting it together is grit. A lot of getting it together was like, no, I'm going to do this. Right. But some of the things that I'm going to do are therapy. Some of the things that I'm going to do are take my meds. And every once in a while I go down this thing with my med and go, oh, I think I got it. I think I can back off. And then, no, I can't. So I think it's a both and scenario, but I do always believe you have to walk. If you are able and capable, you must walk into the experience of your life.
I totally don't disagree with that. I'm totally aligned with that. Yeah. I think the how you walk is where the non-judgment comes in. And your own personal journey. And look, now that you shared what you shared, dude, that's a lot of trauma. Whether you experience directly or indirectly, it's in our DNA, right? It's in the way we're brought up. I didn't even
notice it, right? Like when I tell stories about it, Jen, like I'm like, oh, whatever. Because it's just my life, and I don't know any different. And then other people hear it and they're like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, why?"
Yeah. So that's the thing. That's the beauty of it all. It's like kind of like, "Are you okay?" And it's kind of like everyone has that accountability for themselves to actually identify. Yeah, you're gonna walk strong. Like my ancestors, same thing. Like they fought. To freaking people died, to get us here to America and to put food on the table. So of course I have all this, dude, I'm going to freaking fight. But it wasn't until I got a little bit older and learned a little bit more that unless we identify these other parts of us that are real, which is fear, he's called it out earlier, which is the anxiety, which is the like, oh, what makes my palms climb and why are my shoulders up all the time when I'm working? Like, what isn't that? And going back and actually identifying in our own lives what might have caused it. Like, I've been doing the work too. So
sure. The Naomi Osaka thing, I completely think she should have played her tennis match.
See, that's not a shocker, Elliot.
Yeah. Then the Simone Biles thing is and this is the differentiator for me is that Simone Biles could have gotten seriously hurt, right? Like seriously hurt. If you're up there spinning and you're not okay, like you land on your neck and that's it. The consequence of losing a tennis match is just losing a tennis match.
Yes. Okay. So here's the thing. Like, you're very strong in that opinion. Mm-hmm. When I was writing this book, I went through a lot. Everyone went through a lot. I had to write this book in 2020. At the end of 2020, my co-founder and one of my best friends died very unexpectedly. So one of the quotes that I kept on kind of reassuring me about life, like, look, everyone is fighting a battle we do not know about. And that's where I think we can have strong opinions, but at the end of the day, we do not know what the real battle is. And that quote says, be kind, but I say, be human. And just to like follow on the Simone Biles storyline, what I actually love most about that story is what she did after. So she could have just like packed her bag, came home, or stayed in her hotel room because of shame or, because she didn't want to deal with people. But she came back out and she put on a new hat. She had a new role. She became a coach. She even like hugged the Russians, like all this stuff to be a different, like she adapted to that period in time of a very emotionally high wrought, high peak of her life that would determine a lot for the rest of her life. And I just love how she was able to adapt in positive ways for others, not just about herself.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I'm a Simone Biles fan, to be clear. I think she's amazing. And I can't say, and I can't say. So yeah, no, the Simone Biles one is super, is much easier for me. So, but yeah, I agree with you.
I hear you. It was just an example of how we can all adapt,
I agree. It's a
and
great
do for others.
Yeah. I think that brings a lot of happiness to others. For me, that's what it became. Yeah. And I can only speak from my experience to get myself to be more happy, or just to be happy in general, because I wasn't that happy. I switched the focus from this like Elliot centric thing to like, okay, how can Elliot really start giving back to the world in a better way? And that started to bring way more happiness to my life.
Yeah.
Than anything that I ever achieved.
What was the switch for you?
When my students win, what do you mean? What was the switch? I had a breakdown. I had a massive breakdown of anxiety where I was crying and panic attack after panic attack. And my goal came, and the thing that I was trying to do was just get to work every day to go teach. And if I could teach the most amazing class in the world, right? If I could teach the best class, give that to other people, well, then at least for that 2 hours, 2.5 hours, 3 hours, I wouldn't be so focused on how I was feeling.
Yeah. So what you did there was you just illustrated the beauty of like that heartbeats exercise, your lowest low, and you got to this next high, and then you recognize and reflected on what made that happen. And therefore you're a happier person because way happier. What made you happier. Yeah, so that's awesome. And thanks for sharing that.
And it's what you said, to be aware of it. Right?
Yes.
And then you just repeat it. It's like you repeat it and improve on it. Repeat it and improve on it. So that look, not to sound like a conceited asshole, so that I can be happy.
Well, you're not a complete asshole if you're making other people happy too. That's the point.
Yeah, well, for sure. And I think when you really focus it on yourself, you're just not that happy.
Yeah. And that's the realization of like, being authentic to yourself is not being like, I can do whatever I want. That's not the point of being authentic. It's actually getting to the grit of who you are and those, like what you shared about your breakdowns and all that. That's authentic living, because that is actually what builds our muscle for empathy and compassion and ability to care about someone that I have no idea who, where, and how, and their story. That's a longer second parter of this whole conversation.
So let's get back to the workplace for a second, because I know you've dealt with it a lot in the workplace, trying to make happier workplaces.
Yeah.
Because I also believe in growth for a workplace, right? And putting you want the business to do better,
Yep.
So and that can only come through employees and people working together. So and feeling safe and feeling heard and all these things. So how do we make happier workplaces, in your opinion?
Yeah, that's so cool that this is the first time I met you, Elliot, but a lot of the things you say, there's a lot of parallel themes in our lives. So you said growth, and I would say 2020 BC, like happiness could be talked about in workplaces. When Delivering Happiness, the book came out in 2010, it was kind of like a novel. Oh, that's a nice to have. But then over time, it became like, oh crap, we do actually want to make sure our employees are happy first. So then our customers are happier and we actually are more profitable, sustainable. And that all made sense. Then 2020 hit. Then it was like, we couldn't even say the word happiness for a while. And for people to, kind of get their grip on what's happening. So now why I wrote Beyond Happiness is because it's about growth. People can say, happiness doesn't really necessarily belong in the workplace, but they can never say, we don't want to grow, whether it's the business. And if we want the business to grow, we know that people need to be a part of it, and it's part of their growth too. So the way I kind of visualize it is like, you want your organization to grow. You have a higher purpose for your organization. You have your values. Awesome. I mean, you should if you don't, but what makes that growth happen?
We do.
Good. Oh, I didn't mean you personally, but the world.
But look, a lot of martial arts schools don't, right? Because
No,
they
I
just care
understand.
about fighting, for example, in my industry. So yeah, we have values.
Yeah.
But go ahead. Sorry.
Which is ironic because martial arts is based on values.
All based on values.
Yeah. So being able to do that, have that growth is like making sure every individual feels they're a part of that growth. And that comes from inner growth of that individual, and therefore the growth of the team, and therefore ladders up to the growth of the company. And so the metaphor I have in the book is the greenhouse. It's a greenhouse model because we all want to grow. So before BC, it was about, hey, as a leader, we want to build the conditions for greenhouses so people can grow. We don't have to be the tallest tree or the biggest plant. My co-founder and I talked about this a lot, and we all said yes. But what I realized in 2020 was that there was one big piece missing. We want to grow other greenhouses, but we forget to nurture our own at the same time. So those two pieces together, nurture your own greenhouse, tend your greenhouse as you grow others, is how this next phase of business growth, organizational growth can happen. If we want to retain, the best talent, if we want to attract the best talent, all the things we still wanted 2020 BC is a different context now because people have changed. And it depends on what kind of organization you want to grow. And it sounds like you have your ducks in order, ducks in line of what you want, values and purpose align. How do we make sure we're bringing everyone along that line for their own values and purpose, not just ours?
Yeah, I always want to be clear. I have an amazing team of people, so it's not really it's never just me, right? And I think that's part of the growth, right? Like growing by yourself kind of sucks, right? Like it's like, that was cool, but like it's like I grew. Like, can you get this we thing going?
Yeah.
Right. Can you get this we are growing? Like we really I'm about to say I really hate the word I, right? Like. Because it's just so unsatisfying. It's satisfying, but it's fleeting, I guess is what I'm trying to say, right? It goes to those highs that you were talking about and then those lows. And if we keep doing this swinging thing like a pendulum, I have experienced that the lows are way lower than the highs.
Yeah.
So if we can grow, there's always something to find there for happiness. And
totally. I want to share, and I'll share a visual on how that, like, I love the, you don't like the I thing. That's very spiritual of you. But like concentric circles, starting with the me in the middle, we, community, society, and the planet. All of these things coexist. It's not one or the other. And they can't survive without one or the other. But the realization is that we got to start with that me and recognize and be aware of that existence and how, therefore, it really impacts all this other stuff. And so it's not like doing away with the I. Yeah, of course we got to recognize our egos and stuff, but realizing our role and how we need to be accountable on how it impacts the we community and society and the planet.
For sure. All right, as we wrap it up here, there's always two questions that I really like to ask.
Yeah.
When you Googled me,
yes,
which you might have done, most people do that don't know me, what comes up is this fighter thing, right? The pages and pages of Elliot the fighter. I think that's what still comes up. I don't even know. I haven't Googled myself in a while. Which might seem contrary to what you do, because pro fighting, there's pictures of me punching people in the face, right?
Yeah.
Why did you say yes? Why did you say yes to coming on the podcast? Because it could have been very, not in line with what you do. It could be, I don't know, a waste of time. So what made you be like, because you just booked, right? You got an invitation and you booked pretty fast. What made you say yes?
And I'm glad you brought that up because I don't think I've ever done that for a blind request from someone I don't know. It's usually a PR team or someone, some other means. So what I liked about your story is that from what I can glean, is that you started from some place, you were wearing a hat of a certain person. And through that experience, you realized there was more than just wearing that hat. You realized there was more to what work, therefore life can be. And that's just like from me gleaning from, I felt like that you had a purpose that I could align with.
And I asked that question not to toot my own horn. It's just so that people can hear what makes you say yes to what makes somebody who's successful and whose time is not that any of our times are less valuable than anybody else's, but who's busy and successful and working makes them say yes to something that might add nothing, right? I'm not paying you. Maybe you'll sell a book, but you won't sell 100, from this podcast. So
what? I got duped.
But we still. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, did my PR team promise that? But you still said yes, and people need to hear about how to say yes. It doesn't always have to have this ROI attached to it.
Totally, and I think if I'll just expand on why I did it, is because when I got to know what you're up to and where your purpose seems to be going, I really aligned with that. And knowing that you have an audience, probably have no idea who the hell I am, but if we can have a conversation and maybe impact in a positive way, or maybe, drop an idea that hasn't been thought about before, then I'm living my purpose. Then my time is worth spent.
Nice. Awesome. Last question is that I believe everyone has a superpower in the world, something that makes them amazing. And they go out and they give that amazing thing to the world. And then the world in return gives back. And it's not necessarily money or anything, maybe it is sometimes. Maybe money is included. What do you think your superpower is?
Oh, well, I think it's evolved over time, but from my understanding of what, I'm a big believer in being true to who I am, but also really like to hear what people's perceptions are. So I think the biggest thing is that, I see people's light for who they are, whether they're extrovert, introvert, it doesn't really, I don't care, because I feel like I can learn from a stranger on the street. So I think there's something about, I really value everyone's, existence, and seeing that light and being able to deep dive pretty quickly. I'm notoriously known at parties, dude, how did we get here to this topic? But it's just, I think there's something in that, because maybe I just feel like, the more vulnerable I am and more real, the more real people feel like they can be with me. And what else are we here for? To be real and for each other.
That's a great answer. Yeah. That's a great answer. I
Thank
think it would be great if we had a little more of that for like, I thought we did the Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka thing really well. Like we disagreed a little bit, but we weren't like, oh, well, you're wrong and I'm right and you're wrong. And like, there was none of that, right? You know,
No, healthy conversation.
Healthy conversation, right? Healthy conversation about a topic that neither one of us actually really knew too much about because we're not them.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're not them.
No judgment.
Yeah. And even with my like thinking how I think, like I'm still not either one of them. Like I don't know what was going on.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I think we could use a little more of I don't know what's going on and a little downtone on the volume, right, for people because we don't really know.
That's where the introspection is so important, you know, like bring it inward. That's the only person we know.
Jenn, I appreciate you coming on. Tell everyone where they can find you, social media, your book, your website, all that stuff.
Yeah. So, JennLim.com and my social media handle is at @BYJennLim. DeliveringHappiness.com is the company I've been CEO of. And, if y'all have any questions at all, like I'm here. Like I really enjoyed our time, Elliot. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, that was great. I really enjoyed it too. As always, everyone, don't go out in the world and try to be Jenn. She's got her thing that she does, her power that she gives to the world. Don't go out in the world and try to be me. I do my thing. Go out in the world, everyone, and you find your own power. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. I hope you found something useful that you can take and implement into your life. Don't forget to head over to wherever you are listening to this podcast and leave a review. That would be greatly appreciated. Also, go follow me on social media at FireMarshal205 on Instagram. Leave a comment, anything that you would like there. And as always, if you think this would be useful for somebody else that you know for their life, send it their way. That would be greatly appreciated. That's it for this episode, guys. I hope you all have a great day and you go step into that power so that you can give your purpose to the world.